Okay, welcome to the CxF Explained in Detail session. You still sure you want to be here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see whether I can change that. Who of you has at least some understanding of what CxF is? Okay, good. When I was preparing for this session, I found some documentation for a project we did a while back. What do you think from what time this screenshot is, just judging by the way of the user interface controlled?
Which application?
Which time? 1990 or... This one? 2003. So we did the first project on ColorSoft. We did the first project, and it was a non-public project. And I will not share with you with whom we worked because I'm not allowed to. So already in 2003, we did a project on CxF. A meager 13 years ago. So that maybe shows you that certain things just take longer. So CxF has something to do with color. Maybe. So CxF is actually an abbreviation or shorthand for color exchange format. And so there's many things to CxF. I'm going to talk a little bit about CxF/X4, as it is called in shorthand, which is an ISO standard that was published this year or last year. Last year? Good. That explains the use of this color exchange format for a certain application area. So it's part of a series of ISO standards, and this part is called spot color characterization data. And again, the shorthand is CxF/X4. So what is it for? If we look at the text in the ISO standard, so there's always the first part in the standard that's called scope, that describes why the people who have written the standard wrote the standard and what it is to be used for. So it says that this is about spectral measurement data. So for background information, the CxF as a file format can contain all kinds of information, density, LEB values, just about anything. But it can also contain spectral measurement data, for example. And in this case, these spectral measurement data in such a CxF file are to be used in order to characterize spot color inks, individual inks, as opposed to a set of process colorings. And they are supposedly useful if you want reliable printing and proofing of products. And products means, of course, print products in this context. Especially where these products have been designed using these inks. There's also a warning about the limitation of to the application areas. This standard is saying where the same ink and paper combination that has been characterized is used when printing. So this says it's probably only useful if you are not only using spectral measurement data for a certain ink, but that you also have to use the more or less same ink for printing, because otherwise it doesn't help you. Personally, I tend to disagree with this limitation because the possible use of CxF/X4 probably goes beyond that. And it may especially help in situations where you don't have the exact same ink that was used to characterize the data through a spectral measurement. Anyway, everything clear so far? Okay. So what is CxF? And I will explain you what data is taken and goes inside the CxF/X4 file. I never understand why they keep using these strange acronyms for these standards. So how it is constructed. And the underlying idea for CxF/X4 is that you would print your spot color ink like the blue spot color ink that is shown here, both on the substrate, white background, or background where nothing has been printed before, and also on black. And black would be your typical process color black. And you may print 100% of the spot color ink, but you may also print intermediate tone values, like 50% or a range of values, 90, 80, 70%, and so on. So this would be the stuff you're going to measure using a spectral measurement device. And because it can be more work to measure many patches as opposed to measuring just 1 or 2 or 3 patches, there's 3 conformance levels in CxF X4. The most basic one, which is called CxF X4b, is where you only make two measurements, regardless of how many patches you printed. And the 2 measurements are 100% spot ink on the substrate on white background, and the white background of the substrate itself. So this gives you 2 measurement values. The paper, so to speak, or the substrate, and 100% ink.
And only on white?
Yeah, that's substrate. Substrate is the whatever you print on, so paper normally. And it's very often white, but it doesn't have to be white. So in the simplest case, your CxF X4 file will contain 2 values, so to speak. Measurements for the solid color, 100% spot ink, and nothing, just the paper or whatever the substrate is. And just for those of you who are not very strong in printing and so on, paper can be very different, and that's one of the biggest pain points actually in printing. There's a level that's slightly more powerful, and it's called CxF X4a. And it requires that you have 3 measurements. Again, 100% full spot ink, just the substrate or paper, and then an intermediate tone value. So you have 3 measurements. You are encouraged for this CxF X4a conformance level to not just have like 1 intermediate tone value, but to have 11 tint values combined. So 0%, 100%, and then 9 values in between. That would be 10% increments between the steps. But only 3 are required for CxF X4a. So that's the option. So I'm just trying to indicate if you do all of the 11 patches from 0% to 100%, it's still just a CxF X4 file in this case, but you have taken the recommendation into account and have provided more measurement patches than are absolutely required for CxF X4a. And then you have CxF X4, like if you want to go for the real thing, you should also provide measurements of spot ink on black, printed on top of black ink. And again, the minimum requirement is to have 3 measurements on white or on the substrate, and 3 measurements on black ink. That includes the black ink, just the black ink, no spot color printed on top of it, an intermediate value, and then the full 100% spot ink value printed on black. And again, like before, 3 is the minimum, but it is recommended for, in this case, just for the printing on substrate, to have 11 patches and 3 on the black background. Okay, so just as an overview, this is a simplified visualization of the requirements. And at the bottom you have the simplest case, just 2 measurements minimum, CxF X4a, 3 measurements, implying that the 3rd measurement is an intermediate tone value. And then CxF X4, like the maximum conformance level, must have at least 3 measurements on substrate and on black background. So far, so clear? Okay, now looking at these measurements, what does it mean, spectral measurement? It actually means that for each patch, you have a series of numbers. Normally numbers between 0 and 1, but they could also go above 1. And these numbers, so just printed slightly larger so you can actually see the numbers for this patch, they go back to the spectrum. So normally the spectrum, the visible spectrum of light is divided into segments. I think normally it's 10 nanometers wide. That's a typical way of measuring colors in a spectral fashion. Going much more narrow is difficult. It's expensive to build the instruments. But the spectral measurement instrument can say, I want to measure how much light is reflected if I send ideal light, white light, onto the surface. And then for red, there will be more reflectance for the red part of the spectrum than for the blue part. So for each of the segments, like in 10 nanometer increments, I measure how much energy, so to speak, is reflected for this segment, like ultraviolet, blue, green, yellow, red, and so on. And this is done inside the range of 360 nanometers to 780. The minimally required spectrum, I think, goes only from 400 nanometers to 740 or so. I don't know the exact number, but it's kind of this range. Just for background information, you have to take into account that something like 360 nanometers or 780 nanometers, the human eye cannot see anyway. So it's only between these values that you actually begin to see something. And so for each patch, a measurement is made per segment in the spectrum, and the number is recorded. And there's readily available standards that define how to do the measurement, so that if two devices measure the same color, they will more or less arrive at the same measurement numbers. And I don't know whether it's actually easy to see, but there's a line kind of, it's a graph showing you how much color is reflected in this part of the spectrum. So because this is darker and this is less dark, you have higher values for the middle patch because more light is reflected towards the measurement device. So for each patch, you get a series of numbers that by definition are linked to segments in the spectrum of the visible light. So again, slightly enlarged. So for the leftmost part, which is 360 nanometers, probably not really visible, like ultraviolet or something like that, you get a reflectance of 0.0135, and then and so on for the other values. So far, so clear? Good. Now the next question is, CxF, I mean, it's a nice exercise to have spectral measurement data. There's probably lots of people who would know what to do with that. But given we consider ourselves to be in the printing industry, it might be interesting to look around and find out what CxF may have to do with our preferred PDF standard, PDFX in this field. So I'm going to look at that. And so just to make this very clear, as of today, there's no standard that defines what to do with CxF X4 in PDF or where to write the data. There are upcoming standards. So next year, PDF 2.0 will be published. It's a new version of the PDF format. And also the PDFX working group in ISO is working on PDFX 6, which is the next version of the PDFX standard. And they may or may not, which is to be seen, say something about spectral measurement data in a PDFX 6 file. And on that background, the following needs to be seen. So let's assume we have a PDF file, and it's a PDFX4 file or a PDFX6 file. It does have an output intent. That's required by PDFX. So based on the upcoming PDF 2.0 standards and maybe the PDFX6 standards, there is an area in the output intent where you can put additional data. So far for PDFX4, for example, we have the output condition identifier, we have a destination profile describing the printing condition for which the file was prepared, and maybe some other data. In an extended output intent dictionary, we could have an entry called spectral data. And this is exactly where you would put a CxF X4 file. So this is the output intent dictionary, and it could contain a spectral data entry, and in the spectral data dictionary you would have entries for the spot colors in your PDFX file.
So the measuring data?
The measurement data.
There's no processing involved?
So far,
measuring data.
So far just the data. Yeah. So in this example file we have 3 spot colors. They are called silver, violet and red. Interesting choice of spot color. It's actually the example file from the ICC, from color.org. So for each of these entries, silver, violet and red, there will be one XML file. You don't see it as an X file because it's just the data stream for the XML file, but in essence, for each of the spot colors, you have one CxF X4 formatted XML file. If you have a well-behaved file, you have the same spot colors in the PDF and you have the same XML files for these spot colors. But theoretically, you could have any number of XML files and the spectral data, and they can match with the spot colors or not. It's a typical problem, actually. So for each of the entries, you have what I'm indicating here with the CxF label and the file icon. You have one XML file embedded into the spectral data entry in the output intent. Okay. So that's all, so to speak. Thank you for coming. No. I'm intentionally saying this is all because at this time there's no standard or specification what to do with this data. There are a couple of use cases one could think of, and I will briefly talk about them in just a minute. But it's important to understand there's really no ISO standard, not even a recommendation from an association saying, well, if you do this and then you do that, then you get something out of it. In principle, there are 2 use cases for making use of the spectral data. One is you could try to improve proof simulation. So far, when you do proofing, you have 2 approaches. Either you trust the values inside the PDF files, the alternate space of the spot color, the appearance expressed as an LEB value or something like that. You use that on a proofing device. And if you're lucky, they are close with to reality. The other approach is that your proofing system has extra knowledge about spot colors and uses some built-in library or technology to do a better job. Somebody was already pointing to silver, which is a very interesting spot coloring. No LEB value in this world can express silver properly because it's just more than a tree stimulus value that you measure or figure out. It is a special type of surface. It has a very special way of reflecting light. It's a metallic color. And the only thing you would get from an LEB value is probably a gray that is more or less the same gray as the silver, but it's not silverish. So anyway, using spectral data, you may be able to get a better approximation of the spot coloring using a proofing system. This is being done. There are a couple of vendors in the field, and I think all the more professional proofing system vendors have some technology or other to take advantage of that. And they may or may not get to a better proofing simulation than you could get otherwise. Dieter, you want to say something? The other use area is that it's especially interesting, at least from a conceptual point of view, in digital printing, because in digital printing, more often than in traditional printing, you have the situation you don't know yet which inks you're going to use. So you may have prepared a print file, and then you go to a printing system, and it has 6, 7, 8, or in the future maybe even more process colors. There are digital printing devices out there that use CMYK, and orange, green, and violet on top, or light cyan and light magenta, or even light black or gray. And more such additional colorants may be added or used in the future. You may also use any custom spot ink in such a digital printing device. But it's very likely that in many cases you will not have the exact same spot color that maybe you had in mind when preparing the print file. Maybe a print file started as an offset printing file and you did have the special orange, and you go to a digital printing device, it may have an orange, but not necessarily the exact same one. And then the spectral data could help you color convert from the existing PDFX file to a PDFX file that, when printed on the digital printing device, gives you a better reproduction of the orange than you could achieve otherwise. And this is especially true for intermediate tone values or for substrates that are interesting, that have a different behavior than the paper you would originally print on. So this can be done. And it would involve, of course, that you also have spectral information of the inks on the digital printing device, spectral information about the substrate you're using, and so on. I do know that a couple of companies do work in this area. I have no clear understanding of how far they have gotten and how useful it is in production reality. It seems that people in packaging printing or label printing are extremely interested in this because the landscape is very quickly changing in this field. It's probably not relevant for the typical commercial printing. So that's the use cases: improved simulation or improved process conversion. So these are the areas where I think CxF X4 could be interesting. But again, so far it's certain people doing it, there are certain tools and certain companies doing it, but there is no common understanding of how this should be supported in general. Questions so far?
If you do a conversion to regular process color, does it give you advantage over a lab alternate color?
Depends. Most of the applications it won't, because they want to calculate the separation based on spectral information. Who does?
I think it could give you an advantage if you have spectral information for your target process color space. So for the CMYK, if you have spectral measurements for that, then you may be able to do a better job. So, go ahead.
I'm thinking now of digital printing using additional inks. We have, for example, a spot color violet.
Yep.
And on the output device, we have process colors plus orange blue, for example.
Yeah.
Would that then require, if I have at one point full advantage of working with CxF data, that I need the CxF data for the spot color I have in the PDF, as well as for all the output colorants of the printing units?
I think in order to be able to really make good use of this CxF X4 information, you also need spectral information on your target.
And you have to have support for CxF4 in your layout application, like design, Illustrator, and so on.
At some point, you will have to associate the CxF measurement data with your PDFX file.
Yeah.
And I will show you an option using PDF Toolbox how you could do that.
Yeah.
Leonard Rosenthal from Adobe has made a very clear statement repeatedly that Adobe is not planning to support CxF, actively support CxF anywhere.
Since we don't believe in Leonard universal dot anyway, so that doesn't seem but 60% of his sayings are not true.
I think in this case we have to trust him. It's too much of a specialist use case for Adobe to consider it for an application that is used by, let's say, hundreds of thousands of people, and they probably expect that less than 1% of their user group or their user community will ever even consider using CxF.
Does this mean that even PDF 2.0 specification will not, in any case, support constructs to transport this information?
You can. So what I'm showing here is based on PDF 2.0.
I see.
So
but
this Spectral data entry.
It will support it in the file form, in the format, in the specification, but it will not support it in any application.
It does not tell you what to do with it. So there is a place to put it, and then they are saying,
feel free to do so.
Go figure.
And Adobe will not put it will not read it out, probably.
Well, so far there is someone already working on some external plugin, for example, for Illustrator.
But that's also plugin,
Yeah, things are happening. So Alvan is doing work, CGS is doing work. I guess GMG is doing something at some point of time. ESCO is going to do something. You will see tools. They will not come, most probably not come from Adobe, which I think is okay because it's a specialist area.
Specialized stuff.
You have plugins in Illustrator for
Say again, please.
Do you have plugins in Illustrator? I know it.
Pardon?
You can use CxF in Illustrator with plugins.
With plugins.
Yeah.
Plugins.
Yeah. So. Okay. So.
Isn't overprint prediction also an issue? Or might it be a use case?
Yeah, that would be for print simulation, for proof simulation. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Overprint prediction, because
Yeah.
always simulate it, but if you know how it will print out black,
Yeah. You can.
you can make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a bit of a practical look into what we, by means of PDF Toolbox, can do with CxF. So we don't do any color conversion, proof simulation, or process color conversion based on CxF, but we give you access to the data. We allow you to extract or insert CxF data in PDF files. And so just to highlight what this file is about, this is a sample file I was already using. And they have the three colorants. So it was built by CGS, that's why they have CGS silver as the spot color name, and then CGS violet and red. And I need to switch to Toolbox. And this can go away.
But here is sample, are they used as spot color or as additional process color?
Doesn't matter for our exercise.
At that point it's not defined.
Hmm?
At that point it's not defined.
Yeah.
You can have an offset printing process where you have precisely those spot colors as separate colors, but you might also go to a visual output device with an extended color.
From the file syntax level, you don't know. By definition, they're just separate spot color channels. Okay. So that's the file. Actually, you can download this file from the color.org website. What's new in PDF Toolbox, and we introduced it in PDF Toolbox 9, is if there is CxF info inside the file, and CxF means CxF X4, A, B, or just X4, you will see the CxF icon at the bottom. You can click on it, and for some reason the window is empty. Let me see why that is the case. Ah, yeah. Okay, I know why. The XML is not well formed. I forgot about that. So in order to be prepared, you could use checks. So we introduced, need to switch that, where's CxF? Huh? I know. Yeah. I have 6 presentations during these 2 days, and sometimes I get lost. So we do have, if you go to the prepress color and transparency library in PDF Toolbox, we have prepared a set of CxF-related checks, and you can run these, and it tells you that the CxF X4 data is not valid, that the XML is not well formed, and that because we can't read the information, it seems that for some of the spot colors we don't have CxF data. Because if you can't read the data, you don't have the data. Let's have a quick look inside the PDF file. So just in case you couldn't see this from the back, so this is the feedback we get from checking against the CxF. And if we go inside the PDF file, so if you go here, so the information, I will enlarge it in just a second. So this is a data structure. You have the root of the whole data structure. You have your output intent. There's one output intent for PDFX, as indicated here. And inside the output intent, you have spectral data. And if you open this, you can actually get to the data. And in this case, it's just shown as an ASCII stream. It looks like XML to me, but for some reason, it does not follow the schema. So the CxF X4 standard is based on the general CxF format, and there is a schema for CxF X4. And any such file has to be valid according to the schema. And in this case, I believe it's just not the case. It's a pity for a sample file on the ICC website, but that's what it is. And you have such data for each of these. Let's look. No, not now. Not now. Let's use let's look at a slightly different file. Again, I click on the CxF icon at the bottom, and this time I get something. So in this case, the XML is well formed, and it follows the rules created by the schema for CxF X4. And here you can see the information. So in this moment we are looking, so it has one XML file for each of the spot colors in this example file. So we're looking at the OS PMS LEG green. This was actually created by Alvan, by some piece of Alvan software. And you have the various pieces of information. For example, you can still have LEB information as an additional value. So this could be helpful if you wanted to play the appearance of the color in the user interface. You don't want to do the computation going through spectral data and computing the LEB value for that. But this is not essential. Here you have such measurement data as I was showing in my slides. And in this case, the start wavelength is at 400 nanometers. So that is needed so that you know where to start in the spectrum. And then you have just numbers. And I think the delta between them is 10 nanometers. That's defined in the standard. And for each patch that has been measured for this CxF X4 file, you have one such sequence of values for each segment in the spectrum. And in this case, you have all the patches. So just looking at this data, you would not know which patch it is. It's just the patch so far. And then further down, and I have to scroll up from the back, it's telling you, in this case, there are measurements for background substrate directly on paper, not process black pre-printed. And for a tint level of 0 or 3% or 4% and so on, So this one has many more than the 11 recommended patches. You have a reference to the measurement that's further up in the file. So you would have now to go to measurement number S1, and you would find the spectral data for the patch with 0% spot ink. And you go to S2 for the measurement data for 3% spot ink directly on substrate on white background. And then you have a second section where the background is process black. And again, you have measurements for the various tint levels, quite a few in this case. If you wanted to go to tint level 35%, you would have to find patch number K10 further up in the file. Okay, so this is what you find in any of these. And if you wanted to start experimenting with this kind of stuff, you may not have that many PDFX files that contain CxF data. Or you may get one, but you only have tools that can work directly on the CxF data but not extract the CxF data from the PDF. And for this, we have a couple of features in the switchboard. Is it under color? No. Where is it? Prepress. Yeah. So we have three new actions. You can extract CxF data, you can remove, and you can embed CxF data. So in order to extract, I will just use this example. So we should have, I think, seven XML files. So I say extract the CxF, put it somewhere. Here. Export. And if I go look in this folder, export, I have 7 XML files. And these are CxFX4 files, and if you look at them in a text editor, just make this bigger, you have the same stuff as shown before. Yeah. So again, at the bottom you have the information where to find each of the patches measurement data, and then you go up. Let's say let's search for S22. You go upwards. Maybe that's a bit too big. Yeah, and then you have the data set for S22, and then you have. Oh, this is just the. So, okay, in this case, it's just LEB data. Interesting. Okay. Oh no, here's the spectral data. I was just, yeah. So here you find the data. Okay, and of course you could also remove the CxF data. So this is removed. It should not have any CxF data anymore. So also the icon at the bottom is gone. If I run my check, tells me no CxF data is present. And of course, I can also reverse that. I could embed the CxF data I've just exported. So I go to the folder where I have my CxF data, export. And because I would have to import normally more than one XML file, I'm not selecting a file. I'm selecting a folder with files, and the expectation is that the folder contains XML files and that the XML files actually make sense.
How is it matched? By the description inside the XML file?
Yeah, by the name of the ink inside the XML file.
So if the color is in the PDF file where no proper XML file is present, it will be omitted.
Let's check. Where is it? No, it's. What was the file name? Okay. It should be. That should be. So let me just rename all of these. into okay, no more green anymore. So we have screwed this file. So the Oscar file probably should not match, and I haven't tried whether it gets imported anyway or not. So we execute, and just to make this clear, we will save as re-imported Oscar problem. So again, we have CxF data. We can click on the button. We have Oscar, but the question is, should we even allow Oscar? Let's see what the find CxF issues says. Spot colors without CxF information. So for the green, there is no matching spectral data information because we have renamed it into Oscar.
But it doesn't tell you anything about the orphan Oscar.
No, it does not at this time. I would have to. Do we have any fix-ups to remove unnecessary crap? I don't know. Let me. I mean, if we started this business, then most files could go away, but no, we can just delete the whole thing. I will admit that there's probably a couple of checks and fix-ups we could add over time that prove to be useful, but my main problem is I have yet to run into people who are actually doing something meaningful with CxF beyond research. So it's still, I mean, if you just make clear to yourself what it means that ICC is working on ICC Max, the next big version of the ICC specification. A big part of ICC Max is spectral data. And they put a sample file on their website illustrating the use case of spectral data inside PDF, and the file is not even valid.
Because there have not been any validator at the time they put it on the website.
No, I've told the guy who. So I will. The file is from CGS. It's not that everybody else is like that. So, and we can of course pretend we do a perfect job here, but we were just focusing on validating. And the other guys, like the CGS guys or GMG or Alvan, they try to get something done. So they put stuff inside and do better color conversion. And just to show you how miserable this state is, and again, I'm not picking on CGS in this case. Yeah, actually, you have to applaud them because they're one of the first to also share what they find and not just keep it to themselves like some other players. Let's look at the internal PDF data structure again for this sample file. If I go to output intents, there's also an entry called mixing hints. This is quite important, not so much on digital printing anymore, but in offset printing and so on, so that you know which ink is printed first, which is next, because that will have an impact on the spectral behavior of overprints. So, ready for mixing hints? For the printing order, I mean, in mixing hints? How do you like that?
Lots of printing units.
So I don't know why they have so many red printing units. Yeah. And it's not the end, so it continues. It's a fair balance. So each of these spot colors gets the same treatment. And they're virtually beating the whole thing to death. It's probably just a small bug in their prototypical software. But this is a state of affairs for doing something with spectral data in the context of PDF. And I've also been told by some vendor in this market that he's very unhappy about the development around CxF because you can put anything inside CxF and it's not very clear what to do with it. It's just a big bag with lots of stuff inside it. And there's no clear direction yet as to what should really be inside. One step is made by the CxF X4 standard. But the next, what to do with it, what not to do with it, when to use it, how to use it, and so on. It's very unclear. So that's CxF as we have it today. This was just the other file.
One question regarding this one example.
This one?
Maybe you can answer that question. In the XML, you have the official resources part where you have all the measurements of individual fields, and then you have the custom resources in that example.
Yeah.
And which measure fields use a substrate background and which measure fields use process background actually defined in the custom resources and not in the official resources part. So I was also always wondering when I was looking through all the measurements, it says A1, A2, A3, but the official mapping of what is A1, is it printed on substrate or is it printed on black ink, is actually in the private part, in a separate namespace.
This might be true, and I don't know the exact reason for that, but I think that part is clean, so to speak. So, because CxF in general is a very big framework, and there's certain things that are absolutely predefined, so you just do it the way it's predefined. And as far as I remember, the use of the CxF syntax for spot color characterizations is a special use case, so to speak. And on the background of the general CxF format, the right way to do this is in a private resource. But it's only private in the background of the CxF base standard. It's not private in terms of nobody else knows about it.
I thought it was private to CGS because they also put their color quality requirements in the private.
Yeah, and with some of the stuff that CGS is putting inside, they are going beyond the schema. So it's not allowed, at least in this part of the XML, to have that information.
Okay.
So, do we have this here? If you buy the standard,
What he is looking for probably is the core specification part, where you have information about how the different spectral values have been measured, substrate, geometry, and so on.
yeah, that should all be inside the file. Yeah. So
it is there. It's just in a part that you skipped.
Yeah, yeah.
From
Yeah, yeah.
one part to the
Yeah.
other.
So also the CGS file, it's not completely crap. It's just there's some syntactical
Yeah,
issues.
Something that is custom.
Yeah.
But they have the standard part.
Yeah. And because the CxF-X4 standard requires that the files are valid against the CxF3 schema, that's what we do. So we run schema validation, and if it's not conforming, then we don't accept it. Okay. Yeah, so it's an open-ended question. CxF, where is the potential? I think there are some parts in the printing industry that could benefit from progress in this field. As of today, I don't see the progress happening so that ordinary production people could use it in daily production. There are a couple of people who have actually been running around already for years playing with it, but there's no clear direction for the industry as a whole. So you may make good use inside your printing plant doing certain things, and that could be very useful. But in terms of file exchange and expecting two printing plants to end up with equivalent results, should they use the CxF data, this is very undefined at this time. Okay. Am I over time already? Yeah, thank you.